I'll call this meeting of the Morton County Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Zachmeyer appears to be absent. L.
Here.
Buckley is absent. Braun.
Here.
Berger.
Here.
Rohr.
Here.
Tomac.
Here.
Wald.
Here.
I'm here. So only missing Zachmeyer and Buckley.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I guess maybe I want to take a reading of the room, and since we have election of officers that has to happen first, but we just have 2 items. If the majority of people are here for the last item, maybe we switch that to first. I don't know. Which item are most people here for? The access? If you're here for the Togash Timberhaven access? Okay, and if you're here for the land use update with the flood zone? Okay. Yeah.
I think you have it right.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, approval of tonight's agenda.
I move to approve the agenda for January 22nd, 25.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved, and approval of the minutes from the December 18th meeting.
And my apologies, I bet I didn't put those in there, so. I don't see them in
So we'll approve them next month.
Yes.
Okay, item number 1, Natalie. Or, yes,
I
item number 1.
think you have to turn over the chair to our secretary, and she will do the ballot.
That's right, yep.
Okay. Are there any nominations for chairman?
I move to elect Jesse Kist as chairman.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for chairman?
I move nomination cease.
Second.
So it has been moved by Al and second by Tomac to cease nomination and cast a unanimous ballot. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, and adjourned.
Okay, are there any nominations for vice chair?
Move to appoint Dennis Rohr.
Well, before I do that, I've only got another year and a half to finish here. So,
It's only a year appointment.
oh,
Nice try, Dennis, nice try.
you know, when you get into things, you know out there that they say, well, it's only a short time, but then you get a lifetime agreement with it.
Second that.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
I move to cease nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Dennis Rohr as vice chair.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to cease nominations and cast a unanimous ballot. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Dennis, 1 more year.
Next year you can tell us you only
I'll
got
take my
6 months,
vitamins and try to make it through.
More convincing. All right, Natalie, item number 2.
And I'm just, in case we did happen to have Andy or someone on the online, I'm going to switch over to the overhead and nobody online. We won't be able to hear anyone online while I have the overhead on. So we have before us a petition to open a road. The petitioner is Pale Horse Investments. The requested access is along the south edge of what used to be Lot 29 of Tokash's Timber Haven. It's hard to see on there, but that strip of land right there. I say Lot 29 because that's what the petitioner mentioned in their petition, but also just because most people have a sense of where that is, and the new lot lines from Timber Haven 3rd are less familiar. So the piece of property, the petitioner owns this piece of property, which is abutting the river. And then this was former Lot 29, and the access that's being petitioned for is along the south side of it. So you'll see that these lots are much different than what is on the county record, so I'm just pointing that out. This is, if you're looking at the aerial, this is that same access. This is the petitioner's property. But that is the surveyed boundary. So there used to be access to this property along the section line. So this was a section line. So this was 2010. A lot of this, I mean, this was basically, land that you could get to. That's a picture of what that area looked like during the June of 2011. So all of that became covered with water in the flood. And then the bank changed a great deal, and what used to be section line access to this property was eroded away. So that access to this property disappeared, or physical access, I should say, along the section line.
Natalie, but how many feet of erosion was there?
I don't know that I couldn't tell you feet-wise, but, if I kind of move this, so this is the tree line. This is that same tree line. And you can see this whole thing that used to be, that is now river. Is that kind of a, you're able to make a little bit of a comparison there? And this is in your packet too. But so this, that was kind of sort of that, essentially. It's just it got eroded away on the north side. So, that's why I don't have it. So this was the original Tokash's Timber Haven plat. So this was lot 29. On that plat, and this is in the large, I gave you a large sheet of this because there's a lot of detail here. Even on the original, you can barely read it, but there was a 20-foot wide, it was called a private cartway. 20 feet wide, stretching across the southern extent of lot 29. It does have roughly 15 feet of connection to Riverside Drive, which is a public right-of-way. The definition of private cartway was not provided on this plat. Usually there's detail about what road or access or utility easements, what those mean and who they are to the benefit of. This just simply had a title that said private cartway. So that is an access of some kind, not very well defined. But so, this is, oh, I'm gonna use this instead. Where's the aerial? Okay. So Dad's Drive, or what is called Dad's Drive, this is kind of a path. It is not an official right-of-way, but I'm going to put up some pictures so that you can see, and I'll reference this as Dad's Drive in the pictures, but that is not a right-of-way, just that you know when I reference it in the picture. This is Riverside Drive. This property belongs to the Fleischers. That property is going to be in a picture that I will put on here. And then, so there is a worn trail that goes from Riverside Drive through, mostly through the Fleischer property, and it cuts up a little bit into Lot 29 and goes out to the river. This trail has been used for many years and is fairly well worn, and I'll show you a picture of it. So this is at the corner of where all those three pieces meet. So it's at the northwest corner of the Fleischer property. This is Dad's Drive, looking north. This is a trail that has been used to get down to the river, and the Fleischer property is mostly that direction. This is zoomed in so that you can see a little bit better this trail that goes that way. So it is fairly wide. This is looking west instead of east. So the picture that I just showed you is standing here and looking this direction. So this is Dad's Drive. This is kind of the trail. This is the trail leading back to Riverside Drive. And this is a tree on the Fleischer property. So this is taken standing on the Fleischer property. This is a view, so just to reference again, so we're standing kind of here, looking north along this access easement, and this is what that looks like roughly. Some trees there along that swath of land. So you may recall Timberhaven 3rd subdivision came and was approved by County Commission in May of last year. So that combined, this was lot 29, combined and reoriented these lots here. So usually if a property owner had access issues, the platting process would be a really good time to resolve those so that a property owner could be part of a platting process and the county can move right-of-ways around and ask for different right-of-way and easements that are necessary. The petitioner was notified, or at least staff had sent the notification to the petitioner's counsel, legal counsel, and the petitioner's realtor, and asked those individuals to convey the notice to the petitioner that this platting process was going on. Petitioner chose not to be involved in that platting process. And there's a letter in your packet detailing a packet from this property owner detailing the timing of communications between their lawyers from this property owner's recollection and perspective. So that is in your packet. So what you have before you, though, is a request from the landowner of the land that's abutting the river, asking for access to their property. So this is our first petition to open a road that we have gotten since we initiated our new process, or clarified process, I guess, that the county adopted that process in 2023. So this went, because it was a freestanding access or right-of-way request, it went to the Highway Department for processing, and it went to the Road Commission first. So Road Commission reviewed this petition and recommended to Planning and Zoning and to County Commission that the county deny the petition as access already exists to the petitioner's property. Staff is also recommending that we deny this petition because access already exists. And we can get into more details if you have more detailed questions.
Any questions for Natalie? Questions for Natalie?
I have one
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
So is the road or path, 20-foot, is that going through Linda and Tokash's land, or just?
So the requested swath of land where they're requesting the county to open a road runs across property that is owned by Johnny and Elizabeth Duran. And they were unable to make the hearing. They're not around so at the moment, so that's why they provided a letter.
So why can't they go, okay, so there's, let's see, do you have a map to put back
Yes.
up?
Which map would you
Okay,
like?
well, okay, what I show here is, like, there's the Dad's Drive,
Mhm.
and then there's also, let's see, between, I don't know where it's at here. I don't know what you'd call this. Okay, so next to Dahl and, like, say, Tokash there's kind of like that road. And it goes through, and then it goes over to Dad's Drive.
Can you tell me which piece of paper? Can you
Okay,
hold it up, what
right
you're
there.
looking at?
Okay, so like on the bottom, right there, and then it goes across, it goes that way, and then there's that. Okay, there's kind of a road that goes through there, and it goes to Dad's Drive.
Dad's Drive is to the right.
That way, you mean? So this is, to orient everybody, so this is north.
Right.
East, southwest. Yep. So this, if you're coming into Tokash's Timber Haven, you take, this is a public right-of-way.
Yep,
You would come down here,
right.
and then it ends pretty much at the approach to this property. Technically, the county owns right-of-way all the
Right.
way over here, but this isn't really improved.
Hmm,
The improvements kind of stop around the corner there.
okay. So then which way, where does it connect then to Duran's place?
So, most, or really, anybody who owns property on this side, they generally all access from the north side.
Okay.
So that's what the plan is then, is to go that way and then through Duran's yard?
I don't know what the petitioner's plan would be for access. But I'm saying most people, because the petitioners recently purchased this, they purchased it last year, late last year. So, I probably, 23. Where? 23, yeah. They purchased it in 23. So I would say you don't have a habit of which way you would go or not go. There's probably no habit established as to where they would go.
Natalie, I'm unfamiliar with the ability of the county to designate a roadway over private property that isn't a section line and
Sure.
isn't previously established as
Yep.
as an easement.
I can give you background on that. So
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I mean, I see some of the language here. I would take some more background, but ultimately my question was going to be, are there other examples in Morton County where we've done this away from a section line, outside of a plating process?
No, not to my knowledge. I mean,
With no compensation to that
well,
land?
no, we would have to compensate. If the county were to open a road, we would need to use eminent domain, if an agreement couldn't be made with the landowner, establish a market price, a fair market price, pay them that fair market price, and open that as a road.
Okay. I mean, so I guess I'd ask you for a little background. Eminent domain has its own thresholds, right, that need to be met. Is that right?
So I asked our state's attorney just roughly, what the process would be, and it would be some version of eminent domain. I guess I am not, we have not had to exercise that, so I'm not real familiar with the way we would exercise that, but it would be something where we would have to compensate that landowner, the Durans, to take their property for public use as a road.
Thanks. Any other questions for Natalie?
Mr. Chairman, Natalie, you said there is public access, but you go more into details with more detailed
Yeah.
questions. What's
The
currently
status.
the public, the access to the property?
Sure. So the public right-of-ways that exist are from here to here, and that public right-of-way ends. Can you kind of see that, it's a thinner strip, it's not a lot, it's a right-of-way? And where the Fleischer property starts and the Duran property starts, that's where our right-of-way ends, is on that line. It comes to a dead end. But on the Tokash's Timber Haven plat, there was a 20-foot strip along this south end of Lot 29 that says private cartway. Cartway, just in its title, would mean access. Although it's not a frequently used term, I guess, anymore. It was in the language and century code back years ago to describe this process of, the county assigning some kind of access to a property that doesn't otherwise have it. So that is some kind of access, although we don't know the extent of what that access provides. And any landowner can petition a court for summary judgment to say, what is my prescriptive access? If they had, like this may be prescriptive access down here across the Fleischer property. That was kind of that larger swath there. That's kind of this one. You can see it better here. That's about the width it is as it goes through their property. So that is about that wide. So that could be prescriptive access. Only a court can tell you if that is prescriptive access or not. And this access is an access of some kind. We just don't know what the status of that access is.
So Natalie, the trail on the south end, yeah, right there. So that goes farther south than the pink outline?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I don't know because I don't have, we have survey here, of course, of the lot lines, but it doesn't have an aerial imposed, so I don't know how much goes over, that corner, but the majority of that trail is on the Fleischer property. So the petitioner is petitioning for the exact same strip of land that was the private cartway on the original Tokash's Timber Haven plat.
So Natalie, Mr. Chair, I have a question regarding the width. So would any access that the county designates as right of way, if it was to go through with anything, would the road itself be built by the county?
Well, this leads us into a really interesting discussion. So Century Code says it can't be if you open a road in this manner, it cannot be wider than 2 rods, which is 33 feet. That's not even as wide as what we would require for a subdivision road. Our new subdivision roads are 80 feet wide. We run into this issue on the north side of Tokash's Timber Haven here, where you'd think I'd remember because I've talked through it so many times. I think that's something like 35 feet, maybe. Somewhere around 35 feet. And that is not adequate for maintenance really at all. The county doesn't maintain that corner, or it does, but it doesn't, because we can't really get to it, but there are requests for maintenance. So it leads to this really troublesome status of a quote-unquote road where it's used for access, but it's not wide enough for us to adequately maintain. And then, yes, goes to the question of expense, to build it. And the petitioner has said they are not expecting the county to construct this road. They want it cleared so that they can access by vehicle. But the clearing, of course, is a cost. Taking down trees, if that were to be the access, that's quite a cost. And then the petitioner won't own that piece of property forever. Someone else will own it someday. And perhaps that landowner may ask the county to maintain that road because it is a road. Mm-hmm. So you get into a whole set of responsibilities when you designate something as public right-of-way. You also take on liability for injury that may be sustained on that right-of-way. Mm-hmm. So that's a liability the county would be taking on. That during the road commission discussion, both the Durans and the petitioner, neither party wants to take on liability for an alternate party crossing their property. So if let's say the Durans had traded and traded access for property, and was asking for access that the petitioner across property, maybe the petitioner would own, then the petitioner said, we don't want liability of you crossing this property. And the Durans also don't want the liability of someone having access across their property. So kind of comes down to liability, placement of liability, I guess.
Right, understandable. And then secondly, to clarify, Tokash Drive South is not maintained by the county right now, even though it is...
Well, the county maintains this whole road.
Oh, they do? Okay.
And they maintain around the corner. There's some gravel here, but we don't actively maintain that part. You can drive it. I just drove it before the road commission meeting, and because the ground is cold and hard, it's easier to traverse, but in the summer and spring when it's muddy, it's not real traversable.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Natalie, do we have any additional information on the access? I mean, obviously, you need access to any property, but this is just recreation
Correct.
Property, right?
Yeah,
so infrequent.
I confirmed with the petitioner's counsel. I wanted to make sure that the petitioner understands that their property, because it is a residual parcel and it has never been it's never gone through a subdivision process, is not eligible to be developed. So, and they confirmed that that is not their intent. They want to bring campers or, basically use it for recreation.
Okay, any other questions for Natalie? I'm assuming Andy is not online still.
Yeah, he didn't respond to my text, so he
Okay.
might be
That's okay.
busy saving the world's problems.
Great. Okay, all right. Aren't any other questions for Natalie? This is a public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak on this item? Go ahead and come to the podium, state your name.
And if anybody needs maps, I can be map jockey while you're talking.
Could you leave the map?
Yep.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Lee Fleischer, along with my wife Linda's here, and my son John, and we can answer many of your questions, I think. If I understand the request is that he basically wants the county to buy this land so he can drive through what is known as, still I guess referred to, Lot 29. As you know, Lot 29 doesn't exist anymore because that was replatted and et cetera, but we'll refer to it as the old 29. And that we need to look at where we're at. I would really oppose this basically because it would be a poor use of county and my taxpayer dollars to put in quote unquote a road that may or may not exist in 6 months or 6 years from now. The thing about that is I think there's 2 or 3 lot better options than looking at this. And you looked at Riverside Drive there, and I think she accurately mentioned that. That land was, the easement on that was given by my father-in-law, so there would be access to Lot 29 when that was developed back in the 80s. So the land, the easement ends right where our land starts. And that road is not maintained, as she said. Basically, the county will go around the corner. Sarah is here. It's her corner that she would exit just on the tip of that. And it's really, yes, it's designated as a road. There's places there may be grass in the middle of the road. There hasn't been anything done to it that I'm aware of since '84 when we had our cabin there. So it's, you know, it's available, open to the public, but it's really not used very much. And I would suggest I mentioned that there are 2 or 3 other options. I would be happy to talk about them a little bit more. I think the best solution to this problem is if all 4 parties that are here could sit down and talk about what access they want and who wants to be there and that kind of thing, it could be worked out. Because really, access can maybe go through 4 parts. If you see the path, the one right at the end of our property there, yeah. If you go up like that, that path was down almost on the line before the flood. And some years you can go down there, some years you can't. I know of at least 2 years since the flood where there's water standing, and if you look at the bottom of our property there, that floods every so often. And
I know that that water continues to go north. So the property that he wants the county to buy, the east end of that property maybe is not available to go through without high boots or a boat. You know, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 times. I can remember since the flood, there's been at least 2 times. One year, that whole area was used to shoot carp because of the water. And I know one year that the Durans put logs about that high across so they could walk down to the river. So the end of that, you know, if the county decides they want that land, are you gonna put a bridge in there? Are you gonna put culverts in? Or what are you going to do? I think it's a liability and a cost to the county that just cannot be justified. You know, I have never been contacted by the petitioner. So I don't know how he's got down the land. Maybe he went in the north end. And I think the solution is that we all get together and talk about it, because really, what does he want area to go down to the river? We can work it out, because he's going to go through my land. I might need to go through his land, either that or go make another trail through that. That whole bottom down there was a field at one time. It was the Tokash Gardens. And my father-in-law had the land and farmed. It hasn't been farmed at least since 2011 and many years before that, because it would flood one year and the next year it wouldn't flood, and the willows would start growing, and you know, it's just basically recreational and wildlife, because I don't even know what you do on there as far as recreation goes, because on that land now there's maybe 6 to 10 feet of sand, depending upon where you look at it, and that was washed in by the flood of 2011. Right to the north on the end of this, which is maybe half-mile at the most, is where the home went into the river on the 2011 flood. You know, it's very possible that this land could become an island. And so it doesn't make sense to purchase land to put a road down that. So I think, you know, that's basically my concern. And I think you can see there that second finger right to the north of the old lot 29. That is owned by the petitioner. See, so, you know, I'm sure that it can be worked out that he can find a way to use his own land to get down to where he wants to go. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Lee? I think we're good for now. Thank you, Lee.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michael Lastly. I am the owner of the property without access. I just want to clarify a few facts. We originally, this property was advertised on realtor.com. We went out and looked with our realtor back in July of 21 and took the Riverside Drive into the regular path that's been used forever and ever and ever. Looked at the property, went home, made an offer, signed a purchase contract in July of 21. Planned on closing with the sellers in 30 days pending a survey with updated survey to get a legal description to get access, and everybody said it shouldn't be a problem. And then we've sat. The sellers had just a battle through and through with, they could just make no headway to make progress on this. And so that closing date was extended and extended. Finally, summer of 23, so 2 years into this, they finally contacted us and kind of gave us the options that they've kind of at a stalemate to move forward with this, and kind of offered us either we close on the property kind of as is and then we assume, you know, this discussion, or they go down the path of breaking this contract and suffering the legal ramifications of a, you know, breach of contract. And we chose to, you know, close and take over this discussion because I thought, why would this be a problem? I mean, it's clear North Dakota Century Code, you know, dictates that people should have access to their property. I mean, it's well documented. There's several case laws or case studies out there. So, I mean, how hard can this be to get us access to this place? And so in October of 23, we had to go through the process of a quitclaim deed. And the sellers, there was, I don't know, 8 or 10 of them. Most of them were out of state, and they were just kind of tired of fighting. And so we took over the fight. And then since then, it's kind of been our deal. And we've kind of gone through all the channels to get to where we are today. I've spent more now trying to get access on this place than I paid for the property 4 years ago. I haven't even been out there since July of 21 when we initially looked at the place because I legally don't have access. When we initially took over this, we employed Swenson Hagen to go out and do a survey to make sure everybody's surveys matched. And he was walking down the property line and was politely turned away by Mr. and Mrs. Duran for, you know, risk of being arrested for trespassing, so we didn't even have a survey done at the time. And then in your packet in the Durans, they sent an email that said, you know, they offered a 50-foot swap of land to give us access, which, yeah, sounds great. What they're not putting in there was it was contingent on them having access to the river. And so this is America. You can't just have, you know, that just from a liability standpoint, have just, you know, like a held hostage essentially that you can't get to your place unless we have access to the river. And everybody in the area has been using that existing road, the continuation of Riverside to that property forever and ever. I mean, you see how blown open that thing is. And he brought up an interesting point though, that it's probably not accessible most of the time, but it kind of is what it is. Or there's, you know, the other avenues of access. I mean, it's tough because these roads and streets have street names and they're kind of county roads, but they're not really maintained. And so we're having a problem today, but at some point, somebody in 5 years, 20 years, 100 years is going to want to sell one of their lots and not have access. And so this process is going to kind of continue because that's kind of like no man's land down in that corner. And so the difficult part is we're kind of at a stalemate because we're essentially being held hostage. I mean, I've been paying taxes on this place for the past few years and I haven't had access to it. And so, I mean, as a tax-paying American, I mean, it's kind of what the Century Code is for. I work a lot of hours, and so I employed our attorney to navigate this legally for us just because I don't have the time or the bandwidth to deal with this. And so this shouldn't have come off harsh that we have an attorney, you know, running this thing. It's just I don't have the time to deal with this because it shouldn't have been an issue at this point. But unfortunately, I mean, we can't just have this property held hostage. I mean, I'm going on year 4 now of signing our purchase agreement with this thing. So, I mean, I don't know what's happened out there in 4 years. And he was correct with this map here that the existing road kind of meanders kind of through their land here and then kind of up into here on that little trail. This property that we purchased, here, he's correct, a little finger that extends out here. And so this is the continuation of Dad's Drive down here, Riverside out here. But like Natalie said, the county kind of stops here at the corner and kind of just stops up here, no man's land. And so this is a road, but not a road. And so the current path right now through the Fleischer's property is right here. The other option is getting us up here to our property here, this finger, but there's still no access either here or here. And that's the reason why I haven't been out there. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and so I don't feel the need to be arrested for trespassing, so just haven't been out there. And so this has just kind of been no man's land. I didn't agree with him. I mean, getting access out there, I mean, things change all the time out there, and so at some point this was going to happen to have this sorted out. But I mean, I'm 4 years into this thing, and this place has been held hostage this long. I mean, I think it's time for me to be able to get access to my place. Everybody else out here has access, you know. And the difficult part is everybody in all these houses here have been used to accessing this river through that property, whether legally, illegally, it's irrelevant to me. And now everybody's all concerned that they don't have river access anymore, and unfortunately that's correct, but this property back in 21 wasn't a private listing, pocket listing, anything. It was on realtor.com. It was fair game for anybody to purchase. Anybody could have purchased it. Nobody did except for me, but now it's been held hostage because it's threatening everybody else to cut across there to the river. So, yeah. I'm open to any questions.
Questions for Michael?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. It sounds to me like one of the issues is that there has not been a lot of personal communications that you turn over to lawyers, and once you do that, it's very adversarial. You know,
Yep.
you know, the legal
I
system
completely
works great,
agree.
but once you have the lawyers involved, it becomes adversarial and expensive at the same time. Where I would suggest here, you know, the personal communications to work out the proper owners that the gravitas needed to go out and do that. You know, I don't know if that's been done here.
Well, the difficult part is the sellers tried that for the last, from 21 to 23 to get something sorted out, and we really weren't even involved in that process. And then once the communication started, it was, you know, we'll give you a 50-foot swap, but we need access through the river. And then once, I mean, I don't know about how you all feel about, you know, blackmail and extortion, but I mean, once that, like, if or not or when happens, I mean, it's kind of difficult to move forward from that. If, you know, well, you can't access that property. If we can't access it, nobody can. Well, in the eyes of the law of North Dakota, I mean, through the century code, I mean, we legally should have access to that place, regardless of who I let go through there. If I let, you know, her or you or anybody else walk through there, that would be up on me, irrelevant of me getting access. It should not be a tethered item. It should be completely separate. So, yeah. But once that happened, I mean, there's no place to go from there. That essentially, we'll swap 50 feet, but we have to have access. And then where does that you know, contract on the back of a, you know, napkin stop? Is it for just the immediate people that live right here, 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 or is it for them, their cousins, their neighbors, their, you know, babysitter? Like, where does that stop? So, I mean, legally, from a liability standpoint, I can't have people walking through the property to go to the river drowned and sue me. I mean, for the same reason why everybody else has, you know.
Of course, you realize that, you know, just by having something doesn't open you to a liability suit. There has to be a certain degree of negligence. You know, there's a lot of illegal issues involved, but, you know, if the issue is, well, we're going to be just merely having something really exposed to me, that's not necessarily true, because you have to look at the activity involved do you put a hazard in it, for example? Are you creating a hazard?
It's a
people
river
walking down, all
property,
those things,
so
but there's a
it
number
is
of things there, but it's just, just to come out and say that.
But it is a river property. I mean, there is an
It is
inherent
property, yeah,
hazard.
people come down, but, not everything in life is overly protective.
Yeah.
And, it's, that's one negotiation point there you have to look at. And
Yeah.
if you don't want that access, then fine. But I don't know if I would say that the liability issue is the ultimate concern. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And I guess, Michael, I maybe need some help understanding here. And it does appear to me that there are many potential routes into the property, right? And the proposed or preferred route is through the Duran property. And
Yeah, like he was describing that road down there. I mean, you saw the picture. I mean, it's.
Yep. And I guess
it's blown wide open, But like he said, I mean, and like I said, I haven't been down there in 4 years, so I don't know. It could have changed. I mean, there could be a huge crater there for all I know. But.
And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, and I know the Durans aren't here to talk about it, so we don't need to belabor it, but.
I feel like more of that little road is actually on Fleischer's property than
Okay.
Duran's, so. And like.
Okay, but is it fair to say that the pink, where's Natalie? The pink highlighted area that we're partially talking about is on the Duran property? Is that? I guess, yeah, I believe so, right. So, and I guess what I'm getting at here, Michael, what I'm feeling, and we don't need to get into, I think we would encourage those negotiations outside of this. But it seems to me that you're asking for something from them, and in this case includes tree removals on their property, but we're also sort of criticizing them for asking for something in return. So I don't think we need to belabor that point, but I will say that I don't agree with your attitude on that.
Yeah.
And then you talked a lot about 4 years, and so you mentioned that the first 2 years you were not the owner.
Yeah, it was
and
the
during that
sellers.
time you were made very much aware of the access issues. So to kind of call yourself trapped in this, I'm struggling a bit with that, because in some cases we do have people who acquire property and are unaware of certain issues. It appears in this case you were made abundantly aware of what you were stepping into.
Yeah.
And now you're learning that their 2 years were not.
I guess a few things that we're probably are learning is, and Natalie kind of touched on this, is the definition of a cartway path being easement or easement or access, whatever the word is, that the county would use. And so in some instances, like the cartway paths are county easement, and then in other languages they're not, and they're private property. And that's kind of where the whole rub kind of comes from, is if the county defines the cartway path as just public use path, we wouldn't even need to be here, because there's, because then essentially I can use this cartway path to get right to this finger, which is part of this property, and this isn't even an issue. Or essentially this entire cartway path here, you can come all the way down and access it that way, but the definition is ambiguous. And so I don't need to be charged with trespassing to figure that out. That's why we're here. That's the whole thing. So, because at any one point, all of these other homeowners here, if that is their cartway path that they own and they're paying tax on, then I am not entitled to go down that road. But it does have a street designation, Dad's Drive, so then essentially is a street, but it isn't, and so I think that's where the...
It's not a public right of way, is that correct? Right.
Yeah.
For a short way it is, I think you mentioned that, it's somewhere up here, it trails off.
Okay.
It's no longer a right of way.
Yeah. So then I guess it brings up the interesting thing too, is there's other houses further north up here that they're taking access through these other people's cartway path, I assume. I'm not certain of that.
There's a private easement to the benefit of all these lot owners that goes the length of that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is what type of easement, Natalie? And we don't have to get into it. Doesn't matter.
I knew it one time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to refresh.
Anything else, Michael?
I think that's everything.
Any questions for Michael?
I just have a quick question, Michael. Okay, so the corner lot, the Quanbecks, where they lost part of their property in 11, like many people, and then there's the next one is Ron Tokash, and then is the next one, which is about an acre, is that yours?
Becky, to clarify what's up north, it is just a mess. It'd be better not to, since that's not the subject of this request. It's complicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, if he owns the, between the Tokashes there, then there's the.
I think you're talking about this spot up here.
Let's look at this one, because this is, well, actually,
I don't think it goes far enough.
yeah. It's,
Mhm.
are you talking about alternate access?
Well, yeah, because there's, on the north, there's that, and then it goes down, and then there's the third,
Yeah.
third
all-
open area there.
Right,
Is
all
that-
those fingers that look like they're getting to Dad's drive, just ignore them. They don't exist, is what I would say. That's why I made a note on here, like, all these lots to the north of the property we're talking about are fully inaccurate. The lines that you're seeing on this side.
For lot lines, Natalie, we should,
These are very inaccurate, and I would not.
Mark's parcel,
Yes,
or plat
is
is
the only
the only,
accurate.
yeah. Okay, anything else for Michael at this time? Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak?
So my name's Sarah Kuntz. I have the corner lot, and I guess I'm gonna make mine kind of short and sweet, because I do see kind of what comes around that area. There are even several years where right across from the road, that whole field is flooded, and that's owned by Belavics. They don't farm that half of the time. Well, I can't say half of the time, but there's many years that that's full of water and carp and stuff, and so they're not even farming that. So it does back up. I would say that I see who comes around that corner, because now anybody who does, you know, if Fleischers come down or whatever else, they're gonna come around that corner. They always have. The access was removed in 2011, kind of when it washed away. But after 2011, it was like a private access, because you had to go through Fleischers or Durant's or Belavics to get there. And, you know, we tried very hard to kind of keep it private. You know, they tried to, Sarah, who comes around this corner, because I'm gonna see most everybody. And in 2021, when this came up for sale, the Durans were in contact with Natalie, as well as Carter, as well as the family that was selling it. So, I mean, he was made abundantly aware that there were gonna be issues. And I guess from that time on, and if I remember correctly, I think they had tried to contact him back in '21 as well, to just kind of deal with some of these preemptively, but nobody goes through that Dad's Drive, that's private access. And on the south side of that, I mean, you can't even make it all the way through because of trees that are still down from the flood. So it doesn't even go all the way through. And then at the Road Planning Building Commission, I mean, the argument there was, they said the petitioner did not ask for vehicle access, and they have walking access, and so they decided that that was, just because they didn't like the extent of the access, didn't give them or didn't put it on the county to give them exactly what they wanted. So I'm gonna leave it there.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else that would like to speak? Do second to last call.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna
Oh, yeah,
anybody
yeah.
online.
Yeah, make sure any.
Just give me a second. There.
If anybody online would like to speak on this item, go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up. Okay, I'll do a final call for the hearing. And I will close the hearing. Thoughts from the commission? I am ready for a motion.
Considering the information given and some of the complicated questions as well as other communicated issues, I want to move to recommend the county commission deny the petition to open road as access slightly exists between the petitioner's private property and a private right-of-way, either by prescription or by platted access.
So before there's a second, just to clarify, Dennis, you said private.
I'm
Do you want to
sorry.
correct that to public?
Correct that right after the petitioner's property and a public right-of-way. Is the correct expression of that.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Without continuing this further, Mr. Lasley came up, you presented your argument, thank you very much. I seem to recall, and somebody might correct me with more details, but when you purchase a property and you go through the title process, they will point out that there's access or there's no access, at which point things will stop and you will have to make a decision. Based on that, if there is no access and you are given options to move forward with walking, or be that the only choice, then you have to decide if you're going to buy that. And I hate to use the term, but buyer beware. So I believe you were presented with the facts. You knew it was non-existing potential entrance or egress or ingress, that you put yourself in a poor position. And with all the other details that we talked about tonight concerning the cost and the other issues, I'm going to have to agree with the motion. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, not seeing any, I will call the roll. L.
Yes.
Braun.
Yes.
Berger.
Yes.
Rohr.
Yes.
Tomac.
Yes.
Wald.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries. Item number 3, Natalie.
Okay, I'm not going to put this up on the screen. You have it in front of you. This is a set of updates to the Morton County Land Use Code. The commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, reviewed these updates in September and October. And pretty much everything in your packet was given a thumbs up after we changed the wording on different items. The one area of these code updates that was left was regarding freeboard or additional elevation above base flood for new structures. So staff sent a letter out to any property owner who had property that was within the statutory flood zone, the 1% annual hazard zone, whether it's an inch of their property or the whole property is in the flood zone. Everyone received a letter within areas that Morton County has floodplain administration over. So that you have the premise, maybe some of you might have property that's just a tiny bit in the flood zone, or you may have your whole properties in the flood zone. If any portion of your property touches the flood zone, you received a letter about the hearing. So to provide some background, HUD came out with a rule last April that any new residence that is constructed with a building permit that is granted on January 1st or later of this year, if it is in the flood hazard zone, the lowest floor of that new residential structure needs to be elevated to 2 feet above the base flood. And so basically base flood is how high the water level is predicted to be, given a 1% chance event, flooding event. And those maps are developed through engineering studies. A lot of people say, well, my property never flooded in 2011, it's fine. That could very well be. The maps that the county must regulate to are based on engineering studies, and that base flood elevation is set through engineering studies. So that is what we regulate to. So our current rule in our land use code is, and we abide by the state's minimum standard. So the state's minimum standard has been for quite some time, structures have to be elevated with the lowest living floor to 1 foot above base flood. So that is what we have in our code. Because of this new regulation from HUD, if a new residence is constructed that is not 2 feet above, that residence will not be eligible for FHA financing, which makes it difficult, can make it very difficult to turn over that property. We do not want to jeopardize people's ability to resell their home. So, maybe you're building a home, maybe you are using conventional financing, so it's not an issue for you, but when you go to resell it, someone might want to use FHA financing for that home, you'll have trouble selling it. So we are looking to update our code so that we are meeting that HUD standard. So it would be new homes constructed with building permits on or after January 1st of this year would need to elevate that lowest floor to 2 feet above base flood elevation. So that's an increase of 1 foot. So that would be the proposed change. Then we get to the question of additions. So when you make a substantial improvement to your property, you also have to elevate, that addition. And so I guess staff is suggesting, and we can have a discussion, if you are putting on an addition, you should be elevating to that, whatever that level is that your house is at, or the 1 foot. So if your house was at 1 foot, elevate to 1 foot. If your house was built to 2 feet, elevate to 2 feet for your addition. That kind of seems like a no-brainer, but when we change the code, we have to be specific and say that. So I guess I'm suggesting, I have 2 versions of this. I'm suggesting we also add the version that talks about additions. So this is, that's my presentation about the changes to flood, the flood zone part of the code updates that we're doing. So I have, for you commissioners, in your packet, if you go to the part that says, there's a big blank page, or it kind of says, not entirely blank, it says option 2. So option 1 is the 2 pages prior, and option 2 is kind of on its own page. So those are 2 versions of the same thing. The first version says new construction or substantial improvement should be elevated to at least 2 feet above base flood. The second option says new construction should be elevated to 2 feet. And then substantial improvement shall have the lowest floor, including basement, elevated to at least 1 foot above base flood, or an elevation that matches the lowest floor of the existing residential structure, whichever is greater.
And Natalie, just for clarity, those are 2 recommended options. The actual options are
Could be
any
different. Could be
variation
different.
or do nothing, I assume.
Yes, I would strongly recommend against the do nothing option. Very strongly recommend against that. But yes, that could be an option.
Chairman, Natalie, is there a recommended option on your behalf?
I guess I would recommend option 2. So after that kind of cover page, I would recommend that option. Of course, that is more work. Sorry, I flipped these.
Could you enumerate the reason for
the differences?
The option?
Yep. So, okay, so the first version would mean that if you make an improvement, you have to elevate that improvement also to 2 feet above base flood. And then the second option is just you elevate the new structure to 2 feet. And then your addition matches whatever you elevated that to. So the first option actually is more stringent. So.
Any questions for Natalie?
And it is, it was advertised as a public hearing.
Questions for Natalie? Okay, not seeing any. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this item? Yep, just come up, state your name.
My name is Mike Schultz. I live on 8640 Willow Road North. I've lived there approximately about 4 years. And when I first moved there, I have a small garage there currently, so I was really looking into trying to get another garage built or an addition built, because we've got 2 more trucks and they basically sit outside, and you know what the weather does to the trucks and stuff we have out there. So about 3 years ago, I came in to try to get a permit. I'm very naive when it comes to building something. This is my first project ever. So when I went to the desk up here, she drew up some pictures. She took some pictures of my place, and I said I would like to add a garage here, or would like to extend my garage another 30 feet out, so it would be a little bit bigger, you know. So at that time, I didn't know what the level had to be, you know, and I had no clue at all. So when I got KO Construction involved, he came there and he said, well, I'll pour your cement for about $7,200, you know. So I got a quote and everything. So when I went back to the county, I had to meet up with Natalie. So when I went there, I was told, of course, I had to raise it 2 feet at that time, which I don't know if that was supposedly 1 foot at that time, but I was told 2 feet, and I don't know anything about the flood zone type, 2 feet above what.
And Mike, Natalie, it may have been raising it 2 feet.
Non-residential is 2 feet and a half.
Oh,
Or, sorry, 2 feet.
it may have been raised 2 feet to 1 foot above the base flood, right? The ground is
Okay.
already a foot below that flood level.
Okay, and that's fine. So I did ask her also, I said, can I extend the garage? And at that time, she said, you can, but you're gonna have to still raise it. So you're gonna have to climb into this thing. So I'm gonna have a door where I'm gonna have to climb into this part of the garage. And I thought, well, I thought about it and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna pass on doing this garage. So anyway, I finally, after another year and a half, I said, you know, I really need this garage. So I went back and I got, let's see what surveyor did. Independent surveyor came out and he measured the land and he put up a post that was 2 feet. You know, and I'm looking at this thing, it's this high, you know, I'm like, wow, okay. So I got with KO Construction again, and he came out and he says, well, we can do this. He said, we can do like a 2 foot, what do you call it, retaining wall, and fill it and do a floating slab in the center of it. And I said, okay. So it took him almost 6 months to finally come out to do it, but it's done. Well, my building is up, but I think I'm just was frustrated because I didn't know what was going on at that time. And then my neighbor Dave Fisher moves in 2 doors down from me, and he bought that house for about 5 something or whatever it was, and he wanted to add a garage onto it. And I said, well, good luck. I said, you're not going to be able to build that garage because you're going to have to raise it. So come to find out, I look over there a couple months ago and they're starting a foundation on the addition in the front of his home. Okay, so I call Natalie back and I go, why is he able to build this garage onto this house when I didn't have an option to do this? So then I was told that, well, he was grandfathered in. His house was built in 1984, and I go, well, my garage was built in 1977. So why wasn't I able to have that shot of, you know, getting my garage extended without that level of being up 2 feet? And then kind of was told, well, your house isn't worth as much as that one. And it would, I don't know the complication through this whole thing, but anyway, I never had the option. And I'm mainly here just because I'm frustrated, because I had to go through all this. And that's basically all I got to say. I just want to tell you that I just went through this 3.5-year process, and my garage is up now, you know, which I'm very happy to have it. But it is kind of weird because it's way up in the air, so you had to, I had to put a lot of gravel so you could actually drive up into the thing. And like I said, I'm just up here because I was just frustrated through this whole process, and I just had to come up here and say it, so.
Thanks,
All
Mike.
right? Okay.
You're Michael, right?
I am.
Okay, and just one comment, you know, I can see where you had some procedural problems, issues, but my question to you, are you in opposition to the change that we have here?
I am in
Are you in
opposition.
opposition
I don't know that I'm in opposition with it. I mean, I got my neighbors that thought that flood should have never happened, really. They didn't really release the water the way they should have. So they're all frustrated. Steve Blotter lives next to me. He built his garage a year before I moved in, and basically, if you look at his garage compared to mine, mine looks like it's 10 times taller. So I don't know where he got the permit to build his pretty much to ground level, and I did not get that option. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, well, I asked it because, you know, the crux of what we're doing here, we have to look at whether to specifically focus on either approving or not.
I understand that.
You know,
I understand that.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
good to hear your
Right, I'm
issues
here
there.
out of frustration. I mean, I get the 2 feet piece, and
Yeah.
you guys are gonna kind of do what you're gonna do on that, and that's, mine's already up 2 feet, so there's no,
Well, so just to be clear here, Mike, I'm assuming yours is up 2 feet so that it is 1 foot above the 100-year flood. And this is looking to change that to 2 feet. So whereas you had to raise it 2 feet, after this, it would then be 3 feet.
3 feet, yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought too when I first came up here, but, okay. All right, guys, thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Clarify that.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Tom Tokash. I have a property down in Tokash, Timberhaven. I apologize if Natalie answered the question when I was taking a call from nature. My question is base flood elevation. So my property is at elevation 1631. Base flood elevation there is 1631.4. So that means if I raise my property 0.4 feet, I can be out of the floodplain and not require the insurance. I understand the 2 feet. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just looking for clarification on base flood elevation.
So, and for anyone else who would have a similar question, so if you bring in fill and you actually raise, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be your whole property. A lot of times people just do it around the footprint where they're gonna put their house. So if you literally raise that dirt, you know, under, let's say it's just your house, up so that you are above BFE by any amount. And it's a little weird, but, you know, FEMA says a foot above, but if you raise it above BFE, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can apply for a map amendment or like a LOMA from FEMA to get taken out, and then you don't raise it at all after that, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's a little weird, but yes, conceivably, you could do that.
Okay, there's no change in the
But, right, but FEMA would have to approve it, so,
Thank you.
yeah. And just to respond to Mike, I just want to say, if he's still here, or is he not here? Oh, no. Nobody wants to be a floodplain administrator. I guarantee you. I don't think there's anybody who wants to be.
Evening, Commissioners, Chairman. My name is Randy Barnhart. I didn't know of anything before I got the letter about this meeting. I didn't know that there was any other information that was going out on another meeting, but I'm really concerned about the BFE and where that information is derived from. You know, the property that I own, I bought from my parents 15 years ago. They've owned it since the 60s, and we've never had water in our house. We've had it on our lawns, but and it's gotten real close, but it's never gotten in our house. So who decided what the BFE is, and then now we're adding another 1 foot and 2 foot on top of that? So that may be excessive. You know what I'm saying? If you're looking at a piece of property that is already above, that is considered BFE, and then you add another 1 foot, 2 foot on top of that, that's a lot of money, a lot of dirt. I want to add an addition onto my house, and I want to add on a barn to my house, which would be non-residential, right? So then, if I have a barn that's below the BFE, then that wouldn't be covered under FEMA.
You still have to elevate non-residential structures.
Okay, so why did you say before it was only residential structures, and now it's both?
Do you want?
Sure.
So to answer how is the BFE established? So FEMA sponsors engineering studies, hydraulic studies, which are quite costly, to determine that if a 1% chance flooding event were to happen, where would that water level rise up to in the river channel and in the flood fringe on the edges of the river channel? So they do that via engineering and hydraulic,
You got it.
there we go, studies. And so it is estimations through calculations. That's how it's derived or arrived at. And every community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program must regulate to that BFE, whether we think it makes sense or not, whether we like it or not, we must regulate to it.
They must regulate to that, or is their decision to regulate with that?
So, at the national level, FEMA requires that you elevate above BFE by any amount. North Dakota, as a state, has adopted the standard that every community must, if they're participating in National Flood Insurance Program, must elevate to 1 foot above BFE with the lowest floor living space. You also have to elevate non-residential structures too, but that is the state standard. So we, as a community participating in NFIP, have adopted that state standard minimum. There are standards for communities, other communities in the state, like Minot, for example. Their community has decided to regulate to something like 3 feet above BFE because they have extreme flooding there, or have had in the past. That's their community decision about how they regulate their floodplain. We do 1 foot above for residential structures and for non-residential structures. Those happen to match right now. So with this different, the HUD regulation, they are only applying this to new residential structures.
That
So
must be 2 foot above BFE.
correct.
Okay.
For the residential structure. Now, if a garage is attached to a home, that garage counts as residential. If it is detached completely, then it is non-residential. Does that make sense?
Right,
Okay.
but the non-residential still has to be.
It still has to be elevated, yes. And so our standard for that would be the same as the state standard. That would still be 1 foot above, unless we want to make everything the same. But,
So now
I
they
think the whole
just-
point of having this notification was, I'm guessing most people are not going to be interested in elevating any more than they have to, so.
Now, just for my own clarity, both options that we have say changing it to 2 feet for non-residential. So just to be clear, Is that our
Yeah,
intent?
no, thank you. Oh, sorry, yeah. Change that, I've gone through so many drafts of this. Yes, that would not change, that would just be 1 foot.
That's why we're talking about it, right?
Yes.
In which option?
Both options would still just be 1 foot above for non-residential construction. Yeah. Sorry, that
No,
is not what
just-
was in the version online, and my apologies. The change is just for residential.
And Chairman Natalie, for like, what the state standard, you can always go above requiring more.
You can.
But you cannot go below.
Correct, correct. And FEMA leaves this determination up to local communities to regulate in such a way that structures are, this is their favorite phrase, reasonably safe from flooding. So it is up to us to interpret what that means, but we cannot, they have certain minimums that you cannot go below, for sure. And then, did you have another question? I think it was BF, what is
Where
BFE?
do I find the information as far
Oh,
as my
that was what
personal
it is.
BFE? Because, Willow Road,
Yep.
Sunny Road,
Yep. So you can go to, if you Google FEMA Map Service Center. FEMA Map Service Center. It will come up with, FEMA has, you enter in your address, and it will pull up a map that shows you where the flood zone is around your property. And it should have cross sections to show what that BFE is. However, the FEMA cross sections can be far between, and you might be in between those cross sections. So to get an actual BFE, I always have to make that determination as the floodplain administrator. But, if it's a foot different here, it's a foot different here, you're roughly going to be somewhere in between those cross-section elevations.
so they're not very accurate, you say?
In some places they are, in some places they're less accurate, it just depends. But I would go there.
So on the Missouri River, it'd be quite accurate.
Yes, because we don't have that much variation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the Hart River, it's not.
Correct.
yeah.
And there are locations.
That's where I'm at. I'm on the Hart River.
I mean, yeah, especially as you go farther west on the
Yeah.
Hart River, it's
Yeah, if
quite
you,
more.
so basically, if you want to do a project, you would consult with me. I will give you what your actual BFE is, and then I would let you know what you have to elevate to. But you can, and you run into bigger problems in locations where there's no BFE established. That's a whole nother really involved process.
I would like to build.
Mhm.
And Can we have him go up to the mic?
Yeah.
That would be fantastic, because I would like to have an outbuilding. And when we do decide to sell, I would like that property to be valued and not just available 75% of the year, and the other 25% would be flooded. Okay. And also protected. Okay. But as far as the BFE, where I am, in order for me to find that out, I'm spending over $5,000 for a surveyor to come out and do that. And that puts me in a spot as far as 1 foot, 2 foot. You know what I mean? So that's my point. The basis of what BFE is, and then 1 to 2 above that, it doesn't cost less when you build your building higher. You know what I mean? And just to have the dirt moved out to my place and build that up, and then put cement on top of it, that's the cost of the building right there, at least. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Good evening, Commission. Mark Isaacs. I just wanted to make a comment. It really hasn't been stated, and I know Jesse knows this, but the reason for the freeboard that they have and they dictate and want communities to use is because in 20 years from now, when they do another flood study, that elevation may be lower, it may be higher, it fluctuates. So it's really for the protection of the community, even though nobody likes to elevate. But one that does several elevation certificates, you know, people that build their houses in the 70s, the new flood study comes out in June of last year, or last year, and they find out now that they're in the flood zone, and you know, they didn't build to that 2-foot protective grade at that time because it wasn't really imposed. Now they're in the flood zone, now they're paying flood insurance. So that's the reason for the freeboard in there. So I'm not speaking for or against it, I'm just saying that we haven't really talked about the specific of the reason for the freeboard. And some of it is you have the occasion, I mean, the 1% chance flood is a 100-year storm event, but we saw this summer once that we had a 500-year storm, which means that exceeds that. So you could have a catastrophic event, and so this freeboard helps that also. So it's in your case is an example, you know, if it costs more to build, yes, I understand that 100%, but if you don't have it elevated, I've seen a lot of situations out there, and the number one thing that people do not do is elevate their structures high enough, and it doesn't matter if they're in the flood zone or not. I always say you cannot have your home buildings elevated too much. So I guess I'm a proponent for, you know, going to whatever freeboard we decide.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else that would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Daryl Deely. We live at Tomahawk Trail. We've been here before, and it worked out fine. What I'm
that sounds hopeful.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm for this. That's fine. My son flooded out in mine after in Burlington, and it's not any fun. But and you maybe don't have anything to when we talk fill. What do we talk? Do you folks have any anything to do with that? Like, is it class 5 or what are we talking fill?
I mean, Mark, shake your head. I think you have to meet certain requirements for.
2 feet is we know that's
The terminology would be engineered fill.
Right.
It meets a certain classification for compaction.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Likely, hopefully, it wouldn't have to do with me, but just so. Thank you.
Thanks, Daryl. Anybody else that would like to speak in the room or online? And if you're online, just go ahead and unmute and speak up. Okay, I'll do a second to last call for the hearing and a final call, and I will close the hearing. Any discussion from the commission? Natalie, is that non-residential? Is that something we should have a discussion about, or?
No, that was just me not fixing that page because I was focused on the other page. So, yeah, I scratched that out. So whichever option we choose, I mean, again, like Mark said, as a floodplain administrator, I'm all for elevate as much as possible. So if everybody likes 2 feet on non-residential structures, I'd say let's have everything match. But that was, I think, not the intent of what we had talked about last time.
And what was sent out?
I didn't send, so because the wording wasn't as complicated as I thought it was gonna be, I posted it online. I had sent out the letter and said, the packet will be posted the Friday prior, and this wording will be out there. So, this was worse than, I mean, if we pass it without that 2 feet here, this will be worse than, or what people have been shown is worse than what we would pass.
And in the other communities that are higher than 1 foot, do you know if any of those vary between residential and non-residential?
I didn't look into that.
That's okay. Just,
yeah.
I mean, we can do our own thing. I was just curious.
We can. Yep, we can.
Had a comment.
Yeah, come on up, Mark. I'd like to hear that answer.
Yes, there are other local communities that the residential structure is 2 feet above and the non-residential is 1 foot.
Okay.
And that would be Bismarck and Burley.
Okay.
The other thing about Burley is they actually require 2 feet above in a 500-year, which is any mapped area. So even the Zone X areas, the 500-year flood, they require 2 feet above, which is over the top.
2 feet above the 100-year in the 500-year
In the
floodplain.
500-year, yeah. So there's no elevation to go from, so you have to extrapolate out.
Sure.
What the elevation is, so it's just a guess. Sure. And basically they tell them you have to elevate more.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Thoughts from the commission? Natalie, would you just be looking for us to, if we're choosing verbatim option 1 or option 2, just a motion?
Yep. And I just want to make it clear too, so this is kind of the last thing we're addressing with all of this long list of housekeeping changes. So, because we basically approved all the other parts before, whichever version of just this section we approve, I will take the whole thing to county commission on Tuesday.
Okay, so one question I do have, Natalie, you mentioned earlier that this would be effective January 1st of this year, but I assume that it would actually, like, it's not going to be retroactive and
No.
probably doesn't matter. It would be
Right.
when it's approved.
Yep. So hopefully people haven't done a whole lot of building in January.
Well, it'd be
may have.
it'd be pulling permits, right, that would apply.
It's the point at which the permit gets pulled.
Right.
So, if no permits have been pulled for a new residence, which I can't imagine in January, you know what I'm saying? Even if someone pulled a permit in December,
Right.
that HUD rule doesn't apply because the permit got pulled in December.
Sure.
And not this year.
Sure.
So I think by the time we would publish that this happened, we're probably okay.
Okay. Ready for motion?
In accordance with the recommendation from planning, Natalie itself, and I'm looking favorable. I'll recommend option number 2, as defined on page 37 in the paperwork we received on part 2 A, 2A residential construction, and then part B of non-residential construction as well, where it delineates what the expectations are to be.
And Dennis, is it your intention to leave non-residential as written in the packet with 2 feet or modify that to 1 foot?
According to the correction, be the 1 foot.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing any, I'll call the roll. Braun?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Roar?
Yes.
Tomac?
Yes.
Wald?
Yes.
L?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries. Thanks for all your work on it, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.